You got all those books, the Bible, the different Gospels and stuff that people are quite familiar with. Half the time, they didn't even need to read the subtitles. They could look at it and know what was going on.
Deep in the mist-shrouded highlands of Ethiopia, ancient monasteries hold a secret the Western world is only beginning to grasp. While modern Bibles were trimmed and polished by European councils, the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church preserved 81 books, an unfiltered, raw, and vibrant mosaic of the divine. This isn't just a different book, it's a different Jesus. From forbidden prophecies to physical descriptions that defy centuries of art, the Ethiopian Bible offers a radical, gripping portrait of the Messiah. Is Jesus far different from what we already knew? The ancient Jesus. The Western Bible, as most know it, is a 66-book collection finalized through centuries of Roman and European deliberation. It is a curated library, but in the Horn of Africa, the Orthodox Tewahedo Church never got the memo that the canon was closed. Their Bible contains 81 books, a sprawling, unfiltered archive that makes the King James Version look like an abridged Reader's Digest. These extra 15 books aren't just bonus features, they are the connective tissue that changes the entire DNA of the biblical narrative. When we talk about the 81-book mystery, we are talking about a time capsule. While the Council of Laodicea and the Council of Rome were busy deciding which books were too weird or too dangerous for the public, the Ethiopian scholars in the holy city of Aksum were preserving texts that provide the missing links to the life of Jesus. They kept the Book of Enoch, they kept the Book of Jubilees, they kept the Maccabean. These aren't just supplementary reading, they are woven into the very fabric of how Ethiopian Christians understand the Messiah's nature. The Book of Enoch, in particular, is the crown jewel of this collection. For the rest of the world, Enoch was a ghost, a figure mentioned briefly in Genesis who walked with God and then vanished. In the Ethiopian Bible, Enoch is the protagonist of a cosmic epic. He describes the Son of Man sitting on a throne of glory before the world was even created. This isn't just a biographical detail, it's a theological earthquake. It frames Jesus not just as a carpenter from Nazareth who appeared in history, but as a pre-existent cosmic force that Enoch saw with his own eyes thousands of years before the Nativity. Then there is the Book of Jubilees, often called the Lesser Genesis. It provides a granular day-by-day account of creation and the lives of the patriarchs. Why does this matter for the story of Jesus? Because it establishes a hyper-detailed lineage and a sacred calendar that the Ethiopian Church still follows today. It paints a picture of a world where the supernatural and the physical are constantly bleeding into one another. In this version of the story, the miracles of Jesus aren't breaking the laws of nature. They are reclaiming a spiritual reality that was documented since the dawn of time. By keeping these books, they kept a version of Jesus that feels more ancient, more mystical, and arguably more authentic to the Jewish roots of the first century. It's a version where the Son of Man is a title of terrifying power, and where the history of the world is a single, unbroken chain of divine intervention. It's not just a longer book, it's a deeper lens. Does this expanded library hold the secret to what Jesus actually looked like? Jesus, master of multiverse. For decades, Mel Gibson has been the enfant terrible of biblical cinema. With the Passion of the Christ, he gave the world a visceral, blood-soaked reality that Sunday schools usually gloss over. But for his next act, Gibson is reportedly looking beyond the physical and into the metaphysical. This is where the Ethiopian Bible becomes the unofficial script for a version of Jesus the world isn't prepared to see. When Gibson speaks about opening up the narrative to show the realms beyond our own, he is inadvertently stepping into the shoes of the 4th century Ethiopian monks. In the West, we have the meek and mild Jesus, a figure of quiet parables. But in the Ethiopian ascension of Isaiah and the Book of Enoch, Jesus is a cosmic sovereign who descends through 7 distinct layers of heaven, cloaking his glory in the form of angels so he can pass through the gates of the celestial hierarchy undetected. Gibson has hinted in interviews that to tell the story of the resurrection properly, you have to go to other places, realms of shadow, fallen watchers, and ancient fire. This mirrors the Ethiopian tradition, where the victory of Christ isn't just about an empty tomb in Jerusalem. It's about a total, multi-dimensional conquest of the dark forces described in the book of Enoch. Gibson's fascination with the incredible detail of the spiritual war reflects the very reason the Ethiopian Church kept these books. They didn't want a shaved-down version of the Messiah. They wanted the one who terrified the demons and commanded the luminaries of heaven. By looking at the Ethiopian canon, Gibson finds a Jesus who isn't a victim of history, but a master of the multiverse. The detail here isn't just about what he said, but what he is, a being of such intense radiance that his physical form in the Ethiopian manuscripts is often described in terms of blinding light and celestial fire, rather than the soft features of Renaissance art. Gibson is tapping into a primal ancient hunger for a Christianity that hasn't been civilized by Roman law or European philosophy. He is looking for the Lion of Judah, and he found him in the only place that never let the fire go out.
Appears in the Bible, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. God is joined to a lion.
The monasteries of Aksum. But if the spiritual detail is this intense, what does it say about the physical man himself? The physical Christ. In the Western imagination, the image of Jesus is nearly synonymous with the Renaissance. We have been conditioned by centuries of European art to see a man with flowing chestnut hair, pale skin, and soft, almost melancholic features. But the Ethiopian Bible and the ancient tradition surrounding it doesn't just offer a different theological perspective, it offers a different face. When we talk about incredible detail, we are talking about a physical description that aligns more closely with the burning sands of the Middle East and the highlands of Africa than the studios of 15th century Italy. The Ethiopian texts, particularly within the hagiographies and the miracles of Mary, Teamre Mariam, describe a Messiah of deep, sun-drenched complexion. This isn't a political statement made in the 21st century. It is a historical record maintained since the 4th century. In these accounts, the Lion of Judah is depicted with hair like wool and skin like burnished bronze, descriptions that find their echo in the biblical book of Revelation but are often whitewashed in Western interpretations. For the Ethiopian Church, the physical appearance of Jesus is an essential part of his identity as a man of the earth, a bridge between the divine and the dusty reality of human existence. This detailed Jesus is rugged. He is a man who walked the rugged terrain of Judea, his skin bronzed by the same sun that bakes the Simeon Mountains. The Ethiopian manuscripts often emphasize his piercing, luminous eyes, not the soft blue of a stained glass window, but eyes described as having a fire within them. This intensity matches the warrior monk ethos of the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition. Here, Jesus isn't just a wandering philosopher. He is the descendant of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba's spiritual lineage, a royal figure whose very presence commanded the elements.
Queen of Sheba and Solomon. She traveled such a distance to sit it. She asked Solomon, I wish the Bible listed them.
Mel Gibson's cinematic eye has always gravitated toward this kind of gritty, uncompromising realism. If his next project leans into the Ethiopian source material, we won't see a groomed, ethereal figure. We will see a Jesus who looks like he belongs to the soil, whose hands are calloused, and whose features reflect the Semitic and Hamitic crossroads of the ancient world. The Ethiopian Bible reminds us that the universal Christ was a specific man in a specific body, in a specific part of the world that looked nothing like Rome or London. By stripping away the European filter, the Ethiopian texts reveal a Jesus who is both more human and more terrifyingly divine. This physical detail extends to his lineage. The Ethiopian Kebra Nagast, the glory of the kings, provides an exhaustive, riveting account of how the lineage of David was transplanted to Ethiopia via the Ark of the Covenant. This isn't just a footnote. It's a structural pillar of their Bible. It suggests that the detail of Jesus' life includes a geopolitical and spiritual connection to Africa that the West has ignored for nearly 2 millennia. To look at the Ethiopian Jesus is to look at a king who belongs to the entire world, starting from its most ancient cradles. If the man himself was this distinct, What secrets are hidden in the books the world thought were lost? The Garima Gospels. Let's talk about the physical artifacts themselves, specifically the Abba Garima Gospels. For centuries, Western scholars dismissed the idea that any Christian manuscript could survive from the era of the Roman Empire's collapse. They assumed the Ethiopian texts were late copies, mere echoes of European or Byzantine traditions. But then came the carbon dating, and the academic world was rocked to its core. These two-volume sets, housed in a remote monastery accessible only by a precarious climb, were dated between 330 and 650 A.D. This means the Garima Gospels are among the oldest illustrated Christian books in existence. While the rest of the world was falling into the Dark Ages and libraries were being torched, these vibrant, gold-flecked pages were being shielded by the stone walls of the Garima Monastery. When you open them, you aren't just looking at text, you are looking at the high-definition version of the early church. The illustrations don't show the muted, pale figures of later centuries. They show a world of vivid color, saturations of deep indigo, emerald green, and ochre, depicting a Jesus surrounded by African flora and fauna. The Garima Gospels contain sophisticated architectural drawings of the Eusebian canon tables, framed by exotic birds and intricate floral patterns that don't exist in Greek or Latin manuscripts of the same era. This suggests a sophisticated, highly literate civilization that was interpreting the life of Christ through its own unique lens while the West was still in its infancy. For a filmmaker like Mel Gibson, who thrives on texture, the grain of the wood, the weave of the cloth, the Garima Gospels are a visual goldmine. They provide a storyboard for a version of the gospel that feels more like a lost civilization than a Sunday school lesson. But the real miracle isn't just that the ink hasn't faded, it's that the narrative hasn't been edited. Because these Gospels were isolated for over 1,500 years, they escaped the standardization that happened during the European Enlightenment and the various Reformations. In the Garima texts, the parables feel more rhythmic, more poetic, and more grounded in the Semitic traditions of the Middle East and East Africa. The detail isn't just in the descriptions of Jesus' clothes or the color of his skin, it's in the urgency of the language. This is a Jesus who speaks with the authority of an ancient king, recorded by people who saw themselves as the direct inheritors of his spiritual kingdom. The existence of these Gospels proves that Ethiopia didn't just receive Christianity. They curated it. They didn't wait for a permission slip from Rome or Constantinople to decide what was holy. They took the stories of the apostles, translated them into Ge'ez, an ancient Semitic language older than most European tongues, and locked them away in the mountains. When scholars finally analyzed the Garima Gospels, they realized they were looking at a pure line of transmission.
The largest collection outside of Ethiopia. And the Christian material, depending on how one counts, the manuscripts actually arrived taken out of the boxes.
A direct link to the world of the 4th century that had remained untouched by the political maneuvering of the medieval papacy. If these ancient pages reveal a different face of the Messiah, what do they say about the war between heaven and hell? The unfiltered Christ. If the Ethiopian Bible is a mountain, the Book of Enoch is its jagged, lightning-scarred peak. For the rest of the Christian world, Enoch is a footnote, a mysterious patriarch who was not, for God took him. But in the Ethiopian canon, Mashafa Henoch is the foundation upon which the entire identity of Jesus is built. This is the incredible detail that Mel Gibson has reportedly fixated on. A version of the gospel that begins not in a manger in Bethlehem, but in the celestial courtrooms of the prehistoric world. The Book of Enoch provides a terrifyingly detailed backstory to the New Testament. It describes the Watchers, angelic beings who defected from heaven, descended to earth, and corrupted humanity by teaching them the arts of war, sorcery, and cosmetics. This creates a high-stakes cosmic noir. In this context, Jesus isn't just coming to forgive sins in a vacuum, he is coming to clean up a planetary biohazard caused by rebellious deities. This shifts the Son of Man from a humble title of humanity to a title of supreme judicial power. In the Ethiopian text, Enoch receives a vision of the elect one sitting beside the Yos, Ancient of Days. This figure is described with a precision that borders on the cinematic. His face is full of grace, yet his presence causes the stars to tremble. This is the Son of Man, whom Jesus constantly refers to in the Gospels.
Read the Gospels, Son of Man. It's one of the most important titles for Jesus in the New Testament.
While Western readers often miss the reference, an Ethiopian Christian hears the echoes of Enoch every time Jesus speaks. It's a detail that adds a layer of superhero epic to the Messiah. He is the champion sent to imprison the fallen watchers in the valleys of the earth until the final judgment. This enochic influence is likely what draws a filmmaker like Gibson, who is known for his fascination with the harrowing of hell. The Ethiopian Bible provides the map for that journey. It describes the geography of the afterlife, the names of the rebel angels like Samyaza and Azazel, and the specific weapons they gave to men. When Jesus enters the scene in the Ethiopian tradition, he isn't just a teacher. He is the cosmic exorcist-in-chief. He is the only one with the authority to undo the damage done by the giants born of the Watcher's union with humans. By including Enoch, the Ethiopian Bible gives us a Jesus who is intrinsically linked to the deepest mysteries of the universe. It explains why the world is broken and why the solution had to be divine. The detail here is structural. It provides the why behind the how. Without Enoch, the New Testament starts on page 500 of a 1,000-page thriller. Ethiopia is the only nation that kept the first 499 pages bound into the book. It's a narrative of cosmic proportion where the stakes aren't just the soul of one man, but the liberation of the entire created order from an ancient, angelic occupation. This moves the story of Jesus out of the realm of moral philosophy and into the realm of interdimensional warfare. It's gritty, it's ancient, and it's unapologetically supernatural. This is the unfiltered Christ that the Ethiopian mountains protected for nearly 2 millennia, a figure who stands at the crossroads of human history and angelic rebellion. But how does this cosmic warrior king translate into the law and the ark on the ground? The spirit versus the law. Now we begin to understand the presence that haunts its pages, the Ark of the Covenant. In the West, the Ark is a relic from Indiana Jones or a dusty memory from the Old Testament. In Ethiopia, it is a living reality, purportedly resting in the chapel of the tablet in Aksum. The Ethiopian Church identifies as Tewahedo, a Ge'ez word meaning unified or made one. This refers to their belief in the nature of Christ, but it also reflects how they view the Bible. While the West often creates a sharp, sometimes jarring divide between the angry God of the Old Testament and the grace-filled Jesus of the New, the Ethiopian Bible treats them as a single, fluid heartbeat. In their version of the story, Jesus didn't come to abolish the ancient Hebrew laws. He came to clothe them in light. This creates a law and spirit dynamic that is visually and textually dense. The Ethiopian Bible includes the Maccabean, the Ethiopian Maccabees, which aren't the same as the Western apocryphal books of the same name. These texts emphasize the grueling, blood-stained struggle to keep the faith pure against pagan influence. When you read the Gospels through this lens, Jesus isn't just a peaceful reformer. He is the ultimate Maccabee, the final defender of the true law. The detail provided in these extra books gives a grit to the Palestinian struggle that the European canon often sanitizes. The influence of the Ark also means that the Ethiopian Bible is obsessed with holiness as a physical, almost dangerous energy. In the Kebra Nagast, the glory of God isn't a vague feeling. It's a weight, a Kebra, that can actually kill those who are unprepared to handle it. This informs the Ethiopian portrait of Jesus. He is the living ark. Just as the golden chest once held the tablets of the law, the body of Jesus in the Ethiopian tradition holds the uncontainable fire of the Godhead. This is why the Ethiopian liturgy is so sensory, the chanting, the heavy drums, the swaying of the sistrum. They are reacting to a detailed God who is physically present. When Mel Gibson focuses on the physicality of the divine, the way the blood hits the stone, the way the earth trembles, he is tapping into this exact Tewahedo frequency. It is a Christianity that hasn't been intellectualized by the French Enlightenment or politicized by the American Reformation. It is a faith of the tableau, the ark, and the altar. Don't miss the next deep dive into history's greatest mysteries. Subscribe now to stay ahead of the curve.